if you would you grant me permission to record also? That way we have a backup just in case.
And this is why he's the cultivator. Of course. Can I make you a co-host?
Yes.
Okay.
And are you getting an odd echo from me?
I am not, but is anybody else?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Not bad.
Yeah, I'm also in my wife's yoga room right now, and it's it's a little echoey in here. There's yoga mats and not much else in here.
Gotcha.
I think it sounds good. You have
Okay.
rich voice. I think we're good.
Very good.
Awesome.
Where to begin? First of all, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Casey, thank you for having Marie Rose. Thank you for having me. More importantly, thank you for helping to change the culture. And this is really important. I mean, we're undergoing a phenomenal shift right now in the culture. I mean, let's go back in time, maybe 10 years ago. Let's say you were at a party and you were to say to someone, I have been microdosing small amounts of psilocybin mushroom. There's a pretty strong chance that, the police might have been called, depending on what part of the country you live in. It's not like that anymore. I mean, I go to parties, I go to social events. I went to my 40th high school reunion, and people were coming up to me and saying, how do you microdose? And I had the most conservative, sweetest, this girl came up to me. She was the sweet girl at the school. And she said, I really want to microdose. How do I do it? I mean, this represents such a profound change. But here's my story. I am a geek. I love Star Wars. I love Star Trek. I love Captain Kirk. I love going to, I love goofy parties. I love all those things. And when I really get into something, I just go down the rabbit hole. And one of the things I went down the rabbit hole about 3 years ago was microdosing. And the reason for that is I'm always looking for ways to make my body better, to make my emotions better, and more importantly, to make my mind better. And, once you go down that rabbit hole, sure, you can talk to friends and you can, obtain mushrooms from them, or you can start inoculating grain bags. And then you can start cultivating mycelium. And then magically, about 8 to 10 weeks later, you actually have a mushroom. And it's phenomenal. I mean, I just want to say, it's really cool. When you grow mushrooms, it is so cool. And when you get that first crop, you are just in awe. Anyways, I can geek out on this forever. What do you want to know? What do you want me to really talk about?
I have plenty of questions for you guys. Thank you both so much for being here. So these two have been so great from the beginning of our course, have been part of our course and offering grow kits. And I love what you're doing because it's going to make it so much more accessible to people all over the country. So thank you. I think that's the future of growing our own medicines, growing our own food. And so making that really easy and supported is a really beautiful cause. So thank you so much for doing that. Have lots and lots of questions. So the first one we get a lot is I kill everything. I really kill everything. And so how different is it if I'm a person that kills like every house plant or garden? Am I going to struggle with cultivating mushrooms?
No, you're not. And here's why. If you're killing your house plants, if you're killing the tomatoes in your garden, it's most likely because you're overwatering them or you are underwatering them. When you cultivate your own mushrooms, you inoculate this grain bag once. Basically, you inject spores into it, and in about 2 to 3 weeks, this bag will be filled completely with mycelium. there's nothing to kill there. I mean, really, you can't, it's hard to mess that up. You then take that grain bag and you add it to some what's called cocoa core, which is basically coconut husks that have been ground up, and you add a predetermined amount of water to it. You then put it into this thing and you basically let it sit and you let the mycelium grow. And if you look, you can see the mycelium growing in there right now. And aside from occasionally spritzing it with a little bit of water to maintain humidity, there's really not a whole lot that can go wrong. The most important thing is maintain cleanliness. So when you're inoculating your grain bag, when you're putting the spores into it, you want it to be clean. So you're going to use rubbing alcohol and you're going to use a lighter just to basically kill off any bad nasties. When you put the grain bag into that little mycelium tub, you're going to try to do that in a room where there's not a whole lot of dust floating around, where there's not a whole lot of breezes. But I mean, it's really hard to mess this up. It really is. I'm sorry, I'm going down the rabbit hole.
No, that's all good news. Yeah. How long does it take from the time you begin? Like, what's a grow cycle before you have medicines?
Yep. I keep showing this. So I inoculated this bag about 2.5 weeks ago. And if you look, you can see that it's almost completely filled with mycelium. I could transfer this over to that tub with the coconut husks in it right now. And in about, depending on temperatures, in about 4 to 6 weeks, I will probably have mushrooms. So all told, about 8.5 weeks under proper conditions. If temperatures are low, let's say you have a house that's a bit colder, might be about 10 to 12 weeks. But if you can keep your house or the area where the mushrooms are growing around 72 degrees or so, about 8 to 10 weeks.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And the last kind of like practical question
Okay.
I received was in the kits itself that you guys created. So you get your starter kit and you get your guidebook and your consulting support. Everything except the spores, and we included a resource that you guys recommend to get your spores. Is the kit itself good for one grow, or is it something that you utilize, you cultivate and you harvest and then you use the kit again? So somebody asked the question, like, do they need to buy a new kit after each harvest?
So you won't need to buy a new kit. So when we ship a kit to you, it comes in a box like this. I'm not going to open it up because there would be paper flying everywhere. But when you receive the kit, you're going to receive that plastic tub. You're going to receive the coconut core, vermiculite. Basically, you're going to receive all the goodies you need to grow mushrooms except for the spores. You'll go through that course of growing the mushrooms. Again, about 8 to 10 weeks if temperatures are reasonable, about 12 weeks if it's a bit cold in your house. You'll get what's called a first flush, which means you're going to get a crop of mushrooms like this that basically fills the tub. You pull them out, you dehydrate them. I almost ate this. You dehydrate them. And then you can go back and you can re-soak that mycelium. And if you do that, you're going to get a second flush. Now, it's not going to be as big as that first flush, but you're getting another crop of mushrooms. Whoa, and and sometimes you can actually re-soak that mycelium a third time and get a third flush, which is just awesome. Now, here's what you do. Once you're done with that, keep everything in the tub except for the mycelium. You're going to throw that out after about the third flush, but keep the plastic tubs. We send you lights, we send you a mask, gloves, keep all of that, and just get in contact with us, and we will send you another batch of grain and coconut.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Actually, we'll put it up on the website, so we'll make it easy that way.
Okay, fantastic. Spores far and away was like the number one topic. Everybody was curious about spores. So
order through these guys.
premiumspores.com. That's easy. But
Yes.
so people had several questions on the topic of spores. So the first was, we tend to work with in our program, the medicine makers typically work with Golden Teacher,
Mhm.
which I find a really beautiful starting point for
Golden Teacher.
beginners. Yep, that is a Golden Teacher.
Yep, it is.
But people, once they work with the medicine for a while, get curious about trying, especially when you're growing your own and you get the hang of it, like experimenting a bit and trying new spore strains. So are there any that you super recommend for somebody who's still new to practice and new to cultivating, that are fun, kind of like next ones to try?
Okay, so the three spores or three strains you should try are Golden Teacher, B plus, and Z strain. And I highly, highly, highly recommend Z strain. In fact, nowadays, that's all I'm doing is Z strain. It's, for some reason, I don't know why, but it grows exceptionally fast. It rarely contaminates. So if you're a bit sloppy with your technique when inoculating the grain bag or just in handling things, you're probably not going to get a contamination of bacteria or mold. So again, Golden Teacher, B plus, or Z strain. I brought cue cards.
I love it. I'm going to consider that. Sweet. Following on that, people were very curious, do different strains are good for different conditions? So say for anxiety or depression or specific things that they might be working with, if you're going to grow your own medicines for yourself, are there certain alignments that you're aware of?
So here are the three most important words in the English language. I don't know. No, but I mean that. I really don't know. If you go to various spore sites, premiumspores.com, Myco Willie, whomever, you're going to read descriptions about the mushrooms and, attributes that they might have. This one enhances creativity. This one enhances colors. Is that advertising? I mean, is that advertising? I don't know. A little bit about me. I'm growing mushrooms. I'm also collecting wild mushrooms. I very rarely go on journeys. I microdose on a regular basis, but I rarely go on journeys because honestly, it's not something that interests me all that much. And so I can't tell you if Golden Teacher is going to enhance the bright lights around you, or if our native Psilocybe eleni is going to make you more creative. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, thank you for that honesty. We don't know. I mean, I think we're going to learn more as we move along. We have so much to learn, and I think we, especially on a citizen science basis, we're going to start to discover some of these things. I know
certainly.
Just within our group, we've seen within our groups that each intensive we start with a new fresh batch of medicines, and we're all sharing the same harvest of medicines. And we've definitely seen the same imprinting of each, like our March group last year, the medicines came through in dreams. A lot of people had really powerful, beautiful, healing dream experiences, and different qualities of each. But that was all Golden Teacher. And it was very different depending on which harvest and the time of the year and lots of factors. So
right. And realistically, to get that breakdown, what's more effective for dreams, what's more effective for creativity, what's more effective for listening to music, you're going to have to hire James Fadiman to do a scientific study and get 100 volunteers, do it double blind, and give various strains to different people and find out what the results are.
Speaking of singing, that was my next question. Do you feel, when Mike and I had talked about this, about talking to your medicines while they grow, or
Mm.
singing to your medicines to grow. Do you have any rituals around, um, if you want to share?
Honestly, I'm such a geek. I just love this. I mean, I love this. I love getting up in the morning, getting my first cup of coffee because coffee is my spirit animal, and just opening up the cupboard and just, seeing what my little fungal friends have done overnight. And sometimes, I mean, I'll go to bed and a tub, you see a few strands of mycelium in there, not a whole lot. It's like, yeah, whatever. And you wake up the next morning and you go out there, and I mean, the amount of mycelium in there is doubled or tripled overnight. And I mean, if there's a ritual, it's I do a little happy dance with my little coffee cup in my hand. And that's it. Seriously, I keep emphasizing the geeky aspect of this. Really, I so nerd out on this. It's crazy.
You're not alone. I'm part of some grower groups, and you're not alone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people really love it. And Jose's not here tonight, but Jose was in our initial pilot group. Those of you who know, have been here since the beginning, he got completely into
Mhm.
cultivating beautifully. He's an engineer.
Oh, of course.
And from, I mean, creating a place in his home to, he shared a PowerPoint presentation with us of extraordinary mycelial growth, and it's really beautiful. So I'm sorry he's not here tonight, but I'm sure he'll enjoy our replay.
So I was a mechanical engineering major, just to put that in perspective. So yeah, I've got that geeky engineering and what do you call it? The linear mind.
Mhm.
I'm Mr. Linear Mind.
Awesome. Well, we need that balance. Trust me. The other question we received about strains. Someone
Okay.
asked about strains in potency. So are
Mhm.
some strains much more gentle versus, compared, like we have a number of
Yeah.
people in our community that are very familiar with cannabis.
Right.
And so
Right.
cannabis strains are wildly different. If you want some that are relaxing, if you want some that are more energizing, is psilocybin the same?
So again, we're looking at advertising. When you go
Mhm.
to a website and they tell you that this is the name of a real strain, albino penis envy,
Mhm.
is stronger than golden teacher. Now,
Mhm.
I will say that is something that I have seen consistently on sites, but I have never seen it enumerated. I've never seen anyone saying, well,
Mhm.
albino penis envy is 2 times stronger, 3 times stronger. People just say it's stronger.
Mhm.
Um, where I have seen genuine differentiation is not with the cultivated species, but with our wild and native species. So, for example, this is Psilocybe eleni. This was actually growing in a park 2 blocks from my house,
Mhm.
literally just a 3 to 4 minute walk from here. If you compare in size, you can see why people probably cultivate at home just because of the size difference here. But this, gram for gram, is 2 to 5 times stronger than this. And I live in Oregon. I live in Portland, Oregon. About 60 miles from me, out on the Oregon coast, there's a species called Psilocybe eleni. I'm sorry, Psilocybe azarescens. And if any of you read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, he went out to the coast with Paul Stamets in search of Psilocybe azarescens and partook of Psilocybe azarescens. Azarescens, gram for gram, is 10 times stronger than this. So think about that. If you had, let's say you did a social dose of golden teacher, which would be about half a gram. If you did half a gram of Psilocybe azarescens, that would be the equivalent of 5 grams of this.
Wow.
You would not be social. Um,
That's
you,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's where I know of the major differences, not strain to strain, but species to species. Does
Yeah,
that make
and
sense?
totally makes sense. And wild versus cultivated too
Exactly.
is a huge differential. Yeah, Alyssa just asked a great question that ties
Okay.
into that. When you're when we're starting, we're working with a tincture or a
Mhm.
capsule. So it's really easy to control our dose. When you move to
Right.
cultivating, you're moving into nibbling or weighing and chopping and guesstimating. And so,
Yeah.
Alyssa
Do
asked the
not
question,
guesstimate.
how do you recommend when you're first starting to grow, when you're first
Mhm.
starting out, how do you recommend like figuring out your dose when
Okay.
you're on your own
Yeah.
and translating that? Mhm.
Yeah, that it's actually pretty easy. So first of all, I never recommend consuming raw mushrooms. For one thing, you don't know how dense they are. You don't know what their water content is. So if this was a fresh mushroom, you don't know how much psilocybin there is in it per volume, per weight. But when you dehydrate this and you get it, so it's called cracker dry, and I'm going to demonstrate. Did you hear that? Yeah, it's like when you crack a cracker, that's how mushrooms, and they're cracker dry, they are very consistent with their potency. And at that point, I could take this, I could put it in, well, I put it in a coffee grinder, grind it to a fine powder. And then I know that for myself, a microdose is anywhere from zero point 0.05 grams to about 0.15 grams. I know that for myself, a social dose is about 0.35 grams to about 0.5 grams, meaning, I can go to a party, I can have conversations with people, but, things are pretty damn interesting. And I know that, at 1 gram of dried mushroom, I should not be driving. I can have conversations with people, but I should not do anything where there's a fine motor skill associated with it. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the beginning, yeah, I mean, you want to be in a place where the first few days you don't really have to be on and
Yeah.
and functional as usual till you
Right.
calibrate your dose for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I get this cracker dry. I put it in a coffee grinder. I grind it to a very fine powder. And then I store it whenever I store mushrooms, I always store them in a jar with, let me see if I can pull one of this out, with a silica pack.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen these. If
Mm-hmm.
you get medicine of any kind, there's always a silica pack in there. And this basically removes water. It keeps things from being damaged by humidity.
Mm-hmm.
That is extremely important with psilocybin mushrooms because psilocybin is destroyed by heat and it's destroyed by moisture. So you want to keep the moisture out of there as much as you can. So the easiest thing with these, if you have any medicine at home or even an aspirin bottle, guaranteed there's one of these in the bottom of it. Throw it in with your dehydrated mushrooms.
Awesome. Okay. That's great to know. Thank you.
Matt,
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think you can see the chat, honey. Somebody asked if you could repeat what you consider a social dose to
Oh,
be.
certainly. So, okay, again, this is for me. Your mileage may vary, but for me, a microdose, I'll start from the very beginning. A microdose is 0.05 to about 0.15 grams for me. I consider a social group dose to be somewhere about 0.35 to about 0.5 grams. Again, and that's social. I can go to a party, I can have a conversation with people. In fact, I'm chattier than I am now. 1 gram is where it's like, okay, don't touch any heavy machinery. Yeah, go off and have conversations with people, but don't be surprised if, the street lights start getting a little bit bendy. Yes, ma'am. I see you raising your hand.
The other thing I want to say is, so Matt was talking about grinding, and I make a ritual out of it. So I have this antique Alsatian grinder from my uncle in France. But the most important thing, people, is use a scale. Like, you've got to use a scale.
Yes.
Don't guess, don't eyeball, because powdered chunks and how well you grind it is really different. So
Mm.
you get a little kitchen scale, and it tells you points there. I can tell you guys which brand this is too, but sorry to jump in, Matt. I just
Oh,
want
no.
that was just so important for people to know when you grow your own to measure.
Yeah.
No nibbling. People nibble. Don't
Yeah.
nibble.
Yeah.
No
Don't
nibble.
nibble.
That's just the right dryness.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
and I jump in again also. This is really important. With your scale, make sure that it is set to grams and not ounces. This is like so important because accidents have happened. Okay. Just letting you know, accidents have happened.
grams, not ounces.
Grams, not ounces.
Got it. Got
Put
it.
it in the chat.
Thank you.
That happened to some friends of ours, and we're like, he said, I don't know what happened, but the walls started melting. I was like, what did you have your scale on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Hi, Brendan. Hi, Paro. Just got here. Paro had asked if it's sensitive to heat. Can we still put it in water for tea, like hot tea?
Okay, so when I microdose, I actually add the mushroom powder to my coffee, but I always make sure my coffee is cooled down for at least 5 minutes. And the reason for that is psilocybin and psilocin are both destroyed at temperatures higher than 190 degrees. So you want to let your
Okay.
tea or your coffee or your water, whatever you're using, give it that 5-minute rest just to cool down just a little bit.
No, that's great advice. Thank you, coffee drinkers. Thanks, Marie Rose. Awesome. So my last question, I think, is great to segue into. If it's not obvious, Matt is our cultivation resident expert, and we're also going to talk tonight about ancient practice, tradition, indigenous, and the last question I got kind of ties into that with growing your own mushrooms. It's funny, there's been a lot of chat about this in my guide groups and community about starting to present mushroom medicine that's actually grown in your geographic traditional land, and how different. I mean, there's like how many different species of psilocybin? Like 200 across. So, in the Pacific Northwest, there's certain strains
Right.
that are natural. In the West, Arizona, New Mexico, there are different strains. And so growing medicine and using mushrooms that are from different traditions culturally have different ritual and different meaning. So I wanted to see if you guys have any familiarity with that, any thoughts on that. And then I'd love for you guys to share about your film and your background and kind of what brought you into that world. And maybe we can hand it off to Marie Rose to talk about that.
Oh, I'm glad to. I wanted to just, Matt, did you say 190 degrees, Nettie, or 90?
190 degrees Fahrenheit.
You're right, Paro. Sorry about that. And the other thing I thought we should say is how much medicine is one flush? I think we figured out that if you macro and micro, it lasts you a year.
Yeah.
And if
yeah.
Well, it depends on how often you're macro. I mean,
exactly, that's right. So we're saying a few doses of journey doses and then the regular microdose is so amazing that you could just have that for an entire year. Then you do your second flush, could get another half year to year. And why that's important to us is, again, this idea of accessibility to medicine and knowing the source is you, and how, the integrity of it. Also that you cultivated this relationship with the medicine. That seems to be really important. And we kind of were talking about it, it's likened to the hero's journey. You get the calling and you go through there, you decide, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it, then you move forward, you meet your guides, and then you return to the village with the elixir. And I think that when you cultivate, that's one way to look at it. You're on your own hero or heroine's journey to bring the elixir back to this dimension, right, or this reality. And then Matt and I did a film on indigenous healing practices around the world, and how we got introduced to ayahuasca. I'm really square, you guys. I barely even drink. But we were invited to a private ceremony by a shaman in Peru who wasn't doing it as a ecotourism or in any sense of the word, it's just private with their people, their clan. And so when our interpreter said, "You've been invited to a private ayahuasca sacred ceremony," and I was like, "Oh, I don't really, I don't do any of that stuff." And she said, "You can't say no. Like, you absolutely can't say no. Some of your team can say no, but you're the director. You cannot say no." And that's how I got into this sacred plant medicine. Um, I would say that until then, I kind of had a prejudice against it, to be honest, against psychedelics. Because I'd also studied with traditional Tibetan teachers and meditation, and uh, I think I thought it was cheating. You know, like if you can't get to it on the lotus pad pillow, then you're cheating. And then I heard Terence McKenna say, "Guys, we don't have time to just sit around staring at our belly buttons. Like, the gods have given us a shortcut." And I thought, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." so, so doing the ayahuasca, Matt and I had very different experiences. I'll let him speak to his own experience, but for me, I was able to witness my own death. So I'm not afraid of dying at all. I do have fear of living poorly, and not making the best of this life that we're given. So that one rides me a little bit. But the experience for me was profound. Um, and it's like the gift that keeps giving. So I don't know if any of you have ever done ayahuasca, but she comes back to your mind and she calls you back, and then you have like, whoa, flashback. And um, the reason I got into psilocybin is because I didn't want to go back to the jungle and like have cockroaches crawling near my head and sit near and like barf in a hole in the ground. And so I was just like, is there another way? And that's when psilocybin was presented to me as a kinder, gentler, los niños santos. They're not like the mama like just spanking the heck out of you and going, get your shit together. I think they're more like they sing, right? And they kind of sing you into this place of willingness. They trick you too, because then you go, "Oh, these are nice," and then the next time you travel with them, they're not so nice. So that's kind of our background. We're accidental psychonauts.
And the reverse of most people's experience. In my experience, most of the people I meet start off with maybe mushrooms, maybe MDMA, that to go ayahuasca first is kind of going in the reverse. And you're in Hawaii now. I'm curious, are there native mushrooms to Hawaii that you microdosing with your native
I'm
mushrooms?
not. Yeah, I'm not, just because I'm mindful about source, and also I don't know what I'm doing. And so then you have to trust someone else who's an expert. I'm waiting for Matt to come here and forage with me.
Oh,
I'm waiting
totally.
for the nerd. I'm waiting for the nerd guy to come and teach me. But so no, I haven't. Um, in speaking with the different potencies, I have had different experiences microdosing with different strains. There's one that's called Shakti. I have tried the albino white penis. Um, which is interesting because for me, the Shakti was super powerful. That I needed to do half of what I usually would do. I didn't share that with you, Matt. Um, and I thought she'd be gentler because it's Shakti, like feminine energy. No, it's just like ayahuasca, just kicked my. But so that was interesting. Um,
Mhm. Now, when you guys created your film, were you specifically, was it all healers that work with psychedelics or spiritual healers of different lineage? Oh,
Different lineages. We worked with kahunas in Hawaii,
mm,
shamans in, well, ayahuasqueros in Peru, um, lamas, Tibetan Tumo practitioners, which a lot of people equate that, if you've heard of Wim Hof, like how you're able to use
mhm,
breath work to transmute
mhm,
materiality. And so that's also why I think my background was, I'm Vietnamese, so we also went back to my auntie, who was a spiritual healer and a medium. And so we have all this diverse pathways. I think that's important for me too to underscore. Even though we have this beautiful company with my dear friend, um, I believe that there's many pathways that lead us to our greatest truth. And so I'm not here to say, oh, everybody should do mushrooms, because I don't actually believe that. Um, but you know, as much access we have to different tools as possible is important to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really common question I get is like, how do I know if I've never been met any of them, I don't, how do I know what to choose? And what I advise people to do is really listen to your intuition and which ones, like, usually when mushrooms call you, they keep calling you until you answer. Like, you'll start seeing them all over the place. I hear that from people all the time. And so then but also increasingly, I think I've seen one medicine leads people to another medicine, and you can evolve your medicine practice over time. It's an unfolding that happens. I was just listening to a curandero this morning talk about pairing ayahuasca, following ayahuasca at dieta with an experience with wachuma, because they're so different. And it was kind of like the ayahuasca, it was this really powerful, intense opening experience. And then the wachuma is a very stilling, calming, and kind of helped to integrate everything that got brought out. And I don't mean like side by side. I mean like in the integration period months
Yeah.
later.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead. I've done an experience, Casey, at the Science and Non-Duality Conference where we tried to do um, a simulated ayahuasca experience for those who can't actually imbibe for health reasons or geographic legality, different reasons. And what we did was we evoked the Icaros, the songs that are sung during ayahuasca of the Shipibo tribe, um, had ayahuasca paintings projected on the walls and led them into a meditation. And people who had never had a psychedelic experience actually had a psychedelic experience in the room. And and so again, that's part of the practice of transmission, right? So sometimes when I think it's good for the community to know that once you're imprinted with certain traditional pathways, you become an emitter, a transmitter for those truths and practices. And so when you carry the Los Niños Santos within you, after you've imbibed of them or practiced with them, you begin to radiate their energy. And so it's something that's really beautiful to me in terms of it doesn't matter what tradition or what tool. When you start using it and cultivating a relationship with it, you begin to be a carrier, if you will.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely know what you mean. And we've seen that. I think that's why we're noticing people have such a different experience in their journeys after microdosing for some time, because it's the medicine reconnects with you on a physical level, on an energetic level, spiritual level. So it's a deepening of a relationship that you built over time that you kind of already know. It's a remembering. And also too, we've noticed a lot of people reporting a different reaction, not just from people in their lives, but also the animals and nature responding differently to them, because I believe it's like you said, once you touch in with the medicines and you have a different resonance. It's been described all different ways, but one that's common is, I've been out hiking in nature, and wild animals just don't seem to be afraid of me anymore. Like, they're in my presence, they come into my presence, they don't seem to feel fear. They're there and they don't run away where they used to run away. People notice a deeper bond with their pets. People who've had pets that they had lost, their pets have come back to them in dreams. So I think it's that resonance you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, and I would say too that when Matt and I went on our journey, um, but also the team, we were given different transmissions of knowledge and wisdom. And for me, microdosing I don't know if they reactivated or potentized that which was given to me 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And so those abilities, I used to be a practitioner more full time. But I've noticed that those empowerments that I was given have gotten more potent over time, particularly with microdose. I think also because of the pandemic, I'm isolated on an island. Literally, I'm on an island, and that caused me to interact with the medicine and the things I was given in a more profound manner, because instead of sharing the elixir all the time, they kind of allowed me to the circumstances and the mushrooms allowed me to metabolize even on a deeper level.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you think, having traveled and experienced ceremony and traditional spiritual practice in those settings, um, was how different was that an experience to, say, experiences that were back home, kind of in Western world? Yeah.
I know that, Matt, I'm sorry, I'm not letting you speak. Raise your hand if you want to speak.
Well, I'll, you tell your story and I'll tell my ayahuasca story.
Okay. Um, well, I do think being in nature is key. So in Peru, we were in a longhouse along the
Yes.
side of a tributary of the Amazon, and you hear the frogs and the crickets and the monkeys and the cockroaches crawling on the floor next to your head, and you become one with all those things that would otherwise might be repulsive or not very inviting. And when I have journeyed here in Hawaii, we sit out on the lanai by the ocean, um, and so you get more connected to nature. um, but I do feel that context is as important as content. So set and setting, we talk about that in these communities, but it's really important that you feel safe. Some people don't feel safe in nature, so don't do it.
Yeah.
But you feel safe, so that if you're at least you're looking at nature, you have boundaries, so you're not wandering off into the ocean. But I believe for me, being in the Himalayas, and then in being in my home country, in the Amazon, and then in Hawaii, all those settings really um, empower the teachings in a different way.
Yeah, I feel that. Matt, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to jump in with a quick story. And this is the ayahuasca story straight from Peru. So, most people, they're doing ayahuasca, they're seeing jaguars, they're seeing serpents, they're watching the floor melt. Things are shifting around. Not me. No, I'm laying there in the longhouse on my back. Do, 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 do. This stuff doesn't work. Nothing's happening. Oh boy. Anyways, I'm laying on my back. All of a sudden, I just kind of stretch my arms up like this, and my arms hit music. And what I mean is, my arms literally hit the music that the shaman was singing. He was singing a song. My hands went into the notes. I could physically grab the notes. I could bring them closer to me. As I brought them closer to me, they got louder. As I pushed them away, they got quieter. When I did this, they went up and down in pitch. I know this isn't the purpose of ayahuasca, but I was really entertained and I had a great time. And not many people describe their ayahuasca experience as a great time. I had a great time. I would consider it one of the top 10 experiences of my life.
I've
Was it?
actually heard a lot of people report their ayahuasca experience, not that as exactly, but
Yeah.
related to music, where music became
Okay.
a color, or
Mhm.
music became a foreign language that they didn't
Right.
know. They didn't know it in this lifetime, but they're like, I could speak fluent, and the music was speaking that language in the
Hopefully
journey. So
we're going to be joined by my dog here real quick. Hey, George, come here. George, George, come on, bud. Oh, hang on. Hey, everyone, this is George. All right, George, go find Candace. Go find Candace.
Marie Rose, I wanted to ask you about the healers. What would you say with people who the increasing mainstreaming of psychedelics and number of people that are going to be going to the jungle, having been there and then come back, um, what what is your sense that the guides and the indigenous tradition would like to see happen? Do they welcome that? Are they protective of that? Are they I'm curious about how we can respect their tradition, yet open up their traditions to, you know, healing for the planet.
Yeah, I think with a lot of the healers I met, they were just coming out of this keeping it private and only for our own people phase. In Hawaii, it was the case, in the rainforest. But the reason they opened up to us, we had this funny thing called a camera, and they had a realization that they were dying, perishing, and that the traditions were perishing as they knew them. And I get a little emotional, but they were saying, like, there's no way to save these traditions. There's only a way to adapt them to modernity, because modernity is here. We're not going back. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me to accept, was to know these people were dying. They were in full acceptance of it. They're in full acceptance that their tradition might die with them. So they were willing to let us capture it on camera as a
Mhm.
way to shape shift the tradition into something that's usable, because there's no point in having antiquated technology. And they were actually technologists, very um, very intellectual, so that's kind of a misconception of healers. You guys all know this, that we're considered woo woo and we're flaky, um, but really true healers are scientists as well, and they understand the technology that we have or we're given is sacred and must be handed down with precision. And so I think one of the biggest concerns for indigenous teachers is the precision with which these things are taught and practiced. And they have concern about tourism watering down, and some people aren't truly ayahuasqueros or shamans. They just put up a sign and they don't mix the medicine correctly, which is another reason why Matt and I want to help people cultivate, just so you know the source of your medicine, and you're the guide, and you become your own shaman, right? And the mushrooms will direct you. And that's where I felt the shamans were saying, let nature, let the medicine direct you. That's how we found it, because as you guys know, ayahuasca is a very precise formula. There's no way that somebody just went in the jungle. And how
Mhm.
they say they learned the secrets was that the plants talked to them and told them, put this much in here, make sure you cook this that way, this has to counteract that. It's too complex for simple minds, right? um, so I do caution people to, you know, vet your guides, right? Vet your guides, because they're human, and there's a lot of hubris.
Mhm.
And I worry about that, where the integrity is a big question. Um, but that being said, the elders we met were certain that these traditions needed to be passed on, or they wouldn't have even let us through the door. So with
Mhm.
everyone that we met, Casey, we had to run the gauntlet of, we got tested, we got
Mhm.
questioned, we'd be asked questions, we'd be put through certain things. Are you gonna, traipse through this? Are you gonna? And I even think, man, I don't know if you think this, but I even think the ayahuasca ceremony was a test of our mettle, of our commitment to,
Well,
Mhm.
absolutely.
yeah, do you
Absolutely.
wanna peek in on us, or you wanna really understand this?
Mhm.
And had I said no, I think they would have been like, oh, you just want to steal our stories. The other thing that was
Mhm.
important to them was, my book and films called Talking Story, is you don't get to just glean their stories and their medicine and their wisdom. You have to make, like Carmen said, practice reciprocity. What are you bringing? So they always ask me, what are you bringing? And what are you going to do with this if we share with you our stories? And
Mhm.
I said, I'm just the filmmaker. So we can share your stories and your medicine with this form of art. Um,
Mhm.
and Don Pablo Amarengo, who was one of our teachers, really believed that capturing medicine through art was the best and easiest way to translate to eliminate the whole spirituality thing and religion thing. So he was a
That's
painter.
beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
he painted ayahuasca journey paintings, and said if you just look at the paintings, you'll journey. So you don't even have to imbibe of the elixir if you just
Mm,
stare into this and meditate. Um,
mhm.
so I don't know if I answered your question, honey, but
Absolutely. And I love that point. That's been resonating a lot lately, where it's when you're on breaks, you're still in relationship with the medicines, even when you're not, when you're on a break. And once you've done a journey 20 years ago, it will come back to you
yep,
and continue to unfold and reactivate. Um, yeah, no, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, I mean, I've just recently learned like the real story of Maria Sabina, which I will be soon updating in our course work, because we feature her story and have a documentary in the course. And the story that's told is, amateur mycologist Gordon Wasson, wandered to Mexico, and she was gracious enough to share her secret ceremony. And then he came back to the United States. It was published in the 50s in Life magazine with her photo, and she, became famous. That's kind of the story that is told. When in reality, he was a banker. He was the PR guy for JP Morgan Chase, and his trip to Mexico was funded by the CIA. When he got there, everyone turned him away, and he told Maria Sabina that he was there, that his son was missing in the United States, and he was desperately trying to find his son, which was a lie. When she agreed to see him and hold ceremony for him, she only agreed to have him tape it and take photographs if he promised not to share them. He also lied about that and shared them with Life magazine. So it's I just learned like the truth of this story, and I think that's probably true of a lot of the stories.
yeah,
To really, as we learn, about ayahuasca tradition and other Native American tradition in the United States, to really take the time to talk to those elders, um, who know the real history of things, and we can really carry forth the lineage in a more authentic way than the story that we've been given.
yeah.
So,
It's a really sad story, and even her descendants are still living in poverty. One
Yeah.
of our hopes is that we can bring more attention to that, and you know, um, bring resources back to her family. And it happens over and over again where people see money, and I think people in this community realize when we talk about reciprocity, we don't mean transactional relationship. And I think most people don't know the difference, right? It's like I'll take this from you and give you a little bit or something. And that is very sad making. But I think that's where people are authentically want to be their personal best through the medicine and help others to do the same and have that carry that respect. Then be curious, question source, question stories, and always ask about the lineage of where you're going. And
mhm.
I think that's really important.
Thank you. Yes. I wanted to open up to you guys. Does anybody have, I think I covered all the questions that people sent in ahead of time. Um, I think I saw some practical questions. Did you guys get those answered? I saw some rolling through the chat about, I think it was
Humidity.
humidity and dehydrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep them dry. Keep them as dry as you can. That's the key. Keep them dry, get those silica packs, and don't let humidity in to degrade it. And especially if you live in a warmer, moister climate, if you've got them in a jar, keep that jar sealed tight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I saw Carmen ask something about when you're harvesting for the first time and you have your initial cultivation in your box, like, and you're harvesting,
Hmm?
How do you dehydrate from there? I'm sure this is in the guidebook, but feel free to summarize.
Most effective way is buy a dehydrator on Amazon. They're about $30.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, that's the most effective way. You could lay them out on a cookie sheet and have a fan blow over them for a few days. That's not as effective. And because of the moisture being retained for a longer period, you're probably going to lose some potency. Some people have tried drying them in an oven. Don't do that because, again, psilocybin and psilocin are both destroyed at 190 degrees.
Okay.
So do that food. I almost said food processor. Do that food dehydrator.
Got it. Got it. Does anybody else have any questions?
I just wanted to say too, Brendan suggested a glass jar with a seal. Like we do that, so
Yep.
that's a really great idea.
Yeah. Hi, Brendan. I don't know if he can pop on. Sometimes he's driving. But thanks for coming. Yeah, Brendan started cultivating. Hey, oh, you are stationary. Good to see you.
Yes, I am, finally.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have anything to add on you've been cultivating now for 9 months, maybe? Right?
Almost a year.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
since March of last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that everyone's pretty much summed it up pretty well. Really, just keeping them safe and dry out of sunlight, closed up using that silica desiccant packet. Try to dehydrate them as soon as possible afterwards, so then that way you don't have any mold or anything that grows on them and kind of destroy your harvest. That's pretty much it. I have dried them for I do them like a 10-hour dry at 140 degrees. So then that way, like we said, we don't really want to go too high on that temperature. You do want them crispy, like a cracker. They should be able to crack. Otherwise, if they're not, then they could have moisture in them and it could cause problems.
Brendan, how many tries did you have to do before you got it, or did you get it on the first grow?
The first grow that Mike actually helped me with, it was successful. I had a little bit of contamination and it went kind of quick, but then after I actually used double blind mags
Oh, okay.
course.
Yeah.
It was really, really, really super helpful, and it's a wealth of information that took a really long time to process through, but I've had successful grows every single time. I think out of like the 15 or 20 grows that I've had, I probably only had one that never fruited. So it's been a very high success rate there.
Awesome.
I'm going to jump in here. Do you know the reason why it didn't fruit?
It was that specific strain was like a white albino strain.
Yeah.
And those tend to take much longer from what I've heard and what I've researched. And they tend to be a little bit more sensitive to any sort of contamination. And I think that it maybe I needed to pay more attention or less attention to it. It was able to spawn, but it never fruited.
Really? Did you even get any pins at all?
No pins.
Really?
None. It was white, like it was snow white for probably about a month, and then it started to kind of have contamination. So I don't know what had happened. Some of those things you'll never find out why. I imagine it had been just like an invisible contamination that was preventing it from fruiting.
What do you guys recommend? I know once Jose got the hang of it, it took him, I think, the third try that he got it, and it was good to go after that. But then comes the question of, like, once you get the hang of it, you have so much, like it's so much, and what do you do with all of that? So of course you can share with family and friends, but do you have any tips on
Who are you?
Oh yeah, who are you talking to?
Yeah. Both of you. Go ahead, Brendan. You first.
I mean, I have a lot too. Like I've made them into capsules. I'm not sure, like, if I think about it in the sense of like how coffee works, like if you grind whole bean coffee, it doesn't last as long, and it lasts for like fresh for 7 days versus whole bean coffee can last till its expiration date of 6 months usually before it gets stale. I would imagine it's the same for mushrooms. Like if you were to keep them whole, they would probably last longer. But and when I put them in the capsules, maybe they last longer that way too. I'm not sure. So I don't have any physical way to tell you whether or not the potency goes besides just trying them. But I haven't had any issues so far with them.
I just grind and put them in a jar and then throw in the desiccate packet.
Yeah,
And I think, and that's key. Put in that desiccate packet. Yeah. You were talking about quantity. So this is the size of the tub now as the kit currently exists. It's big, but it's not gigantic. And for those folks out there, if you pop onto Instagram and just type in mushroom, you'll see people who fill rooms full of gigantic, like 20 and 30 gallon tubs. That's not for personal use. That's not even for familial use. That's not friends and family. This is definitely for personal use, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, that also, like when you put them in the big tubs like that, you're more likely to introduce contamination at a much higher rate too,
Right.
and you don't have as good success rates.
Oh, I'm gonna go back to a topic we discussed earlier. So this right here, this is Psilocybe alleni. This is a native species. It grows all up and down the West Coast, grows in Seattle, Portland. If you live in the Bay Area, it happens to grow in Golden Gate Park. It's actually very common in Golden Gate Park. I have to tell you, I love finding mushrooms out in the wild. I mean, I do my little happy dance when that happens, but I also know what the poisonous mushrooms are and what the non-poisonous mushrooms are. And the problem with a lot of the native psilocybe mushrooms like Psilocybe alleni, Psilocybe cyanescens, even Psilocybe azurescens, they have deadly poisonous lookalikes. Psilocybe cyanescens has a lookalike called Galerina marginata. And if you eat one Galerina, probably you will be needing a liver transplant in about 2 weeks. So the reason I bring this up, if for some reason you decide, yeah, I want to go out and I want to partake of nature, don't be 99% sure of what you're partaking. Be 100% sure. Have absolutely no doubt in your mind that what you've pulled from the ground is Psilocybe alleni or Psilocybe cyanescens or azurescens and isn't some deadly lookalike like Galerina marginata. Anyways,
No, thank you.
Just a key point to bring up.
Yeah, I recommend people always to go with a guide who absolutely knows what they're doing. I've done it a number of times. It's super fun, even if you don't have the intention of eating them.
Right.
It's just so fun to learn to recognize them and go out. I know James McConchy, who's, to those of you local in the Bay Area, he owns the Hate Street Shroom Shop.
Wow.
I always struggle with that one. And he's a cultivator and educator, and he's in our course program as well. He pre-COVID had foraging tours locally. He would take people up to Sonoma County, often to the coast, but also Golden Gate Park. So I just talked to him the other day, and he's hoping to restart his foraging tours in the next couple months. So, but yeah, go with a guide that knows what they're doing.
And that brings up an important point that there are foragers and guides all around the country. And I'll tell you, Instagram is a phenomenal resource. What I've found, and this is just me, I'm not afraid to write to people or to DM or just say, hey, you've got an interesting feed. I'm going to be in your part of the country in about 3 weeks. Could we go out and go on a mushroom hunt? And if you do it in a way that's not, too weird, because it is kind of weird to be randomly DMing people, but if you're doing it in a way that's not too weird, and you're not saying things like, yeah, I want to go out and find some shrooms, people are open to this. People want knowledgeable people, and they want to help spread the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah. And those of you lots of you guys are in the Bay Area. James is a great local resource. He goes out, and also it's not as publicized, but those of you guys that are in Marin County, there's a nursery called Green Jeans that I love getting plants at. The Kevin who owns Green Jeans is an avid mushroom guy. So
Wow.
you could just go in there and talk to him. And he takes many trips up to the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I
he's
can- I-
he's looking for azarescents, basically.
Probably.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. Did anybody else have any other questions? I know there's lots of questions in the chat. Yeah, you guys, if you want to get in touch with Matt and Marie Rose, yeah, their website is psilobloom.com.
Yep.
Which is really easy to find and can reach you guys through the website. The purchase link for the kit is embedded into the course. So it's
Perfect.
easy to get that. And we have two options in the course. If you want to do it on your own with the guidebook, you can just get the kit and the guidebook, or Matt, you're available too if
I'm
they
available.
want some one-on-one support, which is nice. Yeah.
Yep. And we're on Instagram also, Psilobloom, at Psilobloom. And our DMs are open.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah. Do you guys want to share anything else that I didn't ask about, or you want to share, whether it's on cultivation, foraging, or traditional healing?
MR?
if anybody had any questions, also in the chat, it's so kind. People were asking about the book and the film.
Mhm.
So the book is, you can buy from North Atlantic Books or Amazon. Depends how you feel about Amazon. The film, I had to pull it off Amazon Prime due to distribution issues, but believe it or not, I have a few DVDs left. So Casey, I just asked if you could connect people to me, and I'm glad to. Thank you for supporting the film too, and my book. It really means a lot to me, because the main purpose of the film and the book was to share the transmissions, and to share the stories of the people I was blessed to meet. Does
Thank
anybody have any
you.
questions of us?
Yeah. Anybody else have questions? I think we covered them all. Everybody's
Good.
good about sending them in advance. Yeah. And so, yeah, Alexa's question, Alexa could be tonight. She was going to watch the replay, but she had asked about reusing the kit. Yeah. So all you
Mhm.
really need is the new stuff. Yep.
Right. The
Yeah.
new Cocoa Core vermiculite.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. And if anybody thinks of a question later, yeah, I'll post your website and contact information when we post the replay so they can get you.
And I want to say thank you, Casey, for inviting us, and thank you everybody in the community for being so open and engaged, and also for the work that you're doing in the world and making yourselves the best version of you. That's the most important work. So I'm delighted to be able to sit in circle with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and much aloha.
Thanks, everyone.